everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Leah Pappas. I'm with the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I'm with my colleague Khairunnisa, who's with the National Research and Innovation Agency in Jakarta, Indonesia. And today we'll be talking about one of the ways that we have tried to engage communities in our language documentation project through training. So throughout this presentation, you can expect first Khairunnisa will give an introduction to the theory and the situation in Indonesia. She'll talk a little bit about collaborative documentation, training, and particularly how this fits into Indonesia. And then I'll talk about our project, the workshop, and some of the outcomes of this workshop. So I'm going to hand it over to Khairunnisa.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. As a linguist working on documenting languages, on language documentation, I think we need to always remind ourselves that the language we're working on, if we are outside of linguists here in this case, does not belong to us, but it belongs to the speakers. We probably agree with David Harrison, who's saying that our job is only as the curator, and therefore we need to give agency to the speakers in any project we're running with them. And because language documentation project, we need to give agency because it should be by and for the community. And if we aim for the very good or highest quality of a project, we need to emphasize more on collaboration between us linguists and the community members. But then what does collaborative documentation look like? It will be different for every community. There's no one model for all because every speech community is different one from the other. And then also there's a question, what is the ethical, what is ethical and appropriate conduct in a project? This is also will be different according to HAL 2009, and we agree it's going to be different by country, like how he did his project in Alaska and how he did his project in Indonesia. It's different because every country also has their own rules and norms. How do we conduct ethical collaborative documentation in Indonesia? And by the way, Indonesia, Leah mentioned I'm based in Jakarta and I am an Indonesian, but I received my training in the US. So where is the meeting ground then between Western institutional expectation and the cultures and custom of most language communities in Indonesia? So here we include training because training can be the answer of this meeting ground because it can facilitate a bridge between these two expectations, from this Western academic expectation and those of the local communities, because oftentimes we have different versions. Like in terms of data, Western academics typically aim for large quantity of data. Meanwhile, local communities here, they, in general, it's not really their concern about the quantity of data that we need in our project. So maybe small quantities, and then, they will have if they could, it's really not their concern. And because what they want from Western academics, scholars, is more like friendship, because that is the culture here. Meanwhile, maybe from the Western perspective, they go to the field as their profession. So it's more emphasis on professionality instead of friendship. And also in terms of the workflow, because as a foreign linguist, you're running out of time, you need to be very efficient. Meanwhile, because here they want friendship, so they kind of be, they're like relaxed and more chill. They're not like doing anything hurry, they just want to be with you as your friend or help a little, something like that. And when it comes to dissemination, well, it's, we know academia, right, or Paris. So publication is the main goal. And then for the donors, they want, of course, they want data, how much data we can archive. But then also there's no single answer for what all local communities in Indonesia want. You know, some of them, they want to keep their language private. Some of them are even moved to disseminate their language, the project, through social media. So this will depend on the community, how open they are to share their language or not. Next. And so the training is really important in the collaborative project because it has some function. The major function is to facilitate a space for discussion, because this can be our starting point to raise their awareness. And it's common, right, that speakers, they are not aware what happened to their language, and their language is in danger before we come and tap their shoulder, lift them up, you know, and then, oh yeah, and we need to do something about the language. And you know, the training can also help us to facilitate us to introduce ourselves and who we are, where we're from, and to describe the project. This is really important. They have to know, they need to know what we're doing. So describing here can be done through the training. And we communicate our goals, you know, our expectation, the data that we want, yeah, etc. But not only that, because it facilitates a space for discussion, we also must listen and accommodate what they want so that we can reach a point of agreement or understanding. Next. Another role of a training is that it allows community members to actively participate in documenting their own language. This is possible because the training is an opportunity for us linguists who receive training in Langdoc to do community building. So we equip speakers with skills and knowledge needed, and with this, they can be more active and do it on their own in documenting their language. Next. And when it comes to training in Indonesia, the thing is language documentation is unfortunately a new field in the country. Yeah, because I can say this because to my knowledge here, there's no language documentation course offered in any linguistic classes in local universities. So let alone training communities to document their language. Now the focus has been only on training the researchers, the academics. And this training is typically carried out by foreign scholars. And there's only one official research center for language preservation in the country that belongs to the government. That is where I work, the National Research and Innovation Agency, or it's called BRIN, which is still new. It's established in 2021, and it has one research center, Language and Literature Preservation Research Center, that focuses on preserving language and literature, but it also has a research group on language documentation. Others than this, I'm not sure if there are any institution working documenting languages. Next. Yeah, I think Leah will take over. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, as Nisa said, training is still a very new thing in Indonesia, but it's becoming a lot more popular. And there have been quite a few local trainings in the past couple of years. As Nisa said, many of them are targeted towards scholars and researchers in the country. But there have been a few that are focused on speakers. So we are coming to this project after being involved in one in 2018 that occurred in Kupang in East Nusa Tenggara. And this had speakers of 20 different language groups who attended. Most of them were university students, but not all of them. And it was a great workshop. It produced data on several different language communities. And we found that after the workshop, 63% of the participants were involved in language documentation projects. But so our goals here were to take this training that was for all of these different communities and condense it for a single community. So not training for the sake of training, but rather training for the sake of the success of a language documentation project. So we wanted to take this model, adapt it to a single speaker community, and use it, as Nisa explained, as a way to engage the community right from the start. And so we were coming into the Saparua language community with a ELDP grant entitled Collaborative Documentation and Description of Saparua, an Endangered Language of Maluku. So we were hoping to build relationships through this training, but also to train consultants, speakers as consultants. So briefly, an introduction on Saparua. It's spoken in central Maluku. You can see that's on the right-hand side in the box. And Saparua is part of the Lease Islands, which are circled on the left-hand side of the screen. And Saparua is a spoken, right now our estimate is about 1,500 people on the island. And we have not found any speakers under 16. So the language is clearly very endangered. It's exclusively spoken by the Muslim population, but missing in a lot of households. And the two villages that speak this language are Siri Suri Islam in the southeast and Kulor in the southwest, as well as a diaspora on nearby islands, both due to conflict and migration. So the training occurred at the outset of this project, and we had 4 speakers from Siri Suri Islam attend, 3 speakers from Kulor attend, as well as the heads of the villages and different workers in governmental bodies, and the Ketua Adat, who is a position that's in charge of making sure that activities align with cultural standards. You can see that's our group of attendees on the right there. And this training took place over 5 days. So we took what could be a very large training and condensed it into 5 days to make it very manageable and accessible to as many people as possible. So on the first day, we talked about, it was very theoretically focused. We talked about language endangerment, ethics, and metadata. And this was a very discussion-heavy day where we had presentations, but it was a lot of discussions with the speakers about how they felt about these topics. Day 2 was audio and video recording. This was very hands-on, looking at videos and working with different recorders. Days 3 and 4 were a field practicum in the Siri Suri village. Our participants recorded narratives and conversations throughout the village. And then on day 5, it was very technically focused. We looked at ELON and FFmpeg. There were a few important logistics we had to take care of in order to do this, especially right on the outset when we weren't yet familiar with the community. So we very luckily had help from the village head to help us organize a location for the training, invite the community, both from Siri Suri Islam and Kulur, and invite any officials that should show up at the event. And then we also needed to arrange presentation materials, translating them from English into Indonesian, and food for attendees, which was very graciously provided by women in the community. And it was a really great, actually, opportunity to engage more people in this event and engage more of the community. And what we found in this very condensed training was that by having this open space to introduce ourselves to the community and talk with the speakers, we were able to adjust the project to the community's needs. So especially during that first day when we were focused on language endangerment and ethics, we kind of laid out, like, here's where we're coming from. And the speakers who attended the workshop voiced their concerns. They voiced concerns about sensitivity with data because this is a post-conflict island. And if the wrong people get that data, they were worried about what would happen. We talked to make sure that people's rights were understood. And the speakers mentioned the kinds of things they want to prioritize, such as farming, cooking, fishing, this cultural knowledge. It also had the benefit of giving us support from all of the governmental and cultural bodies that were necessary to conduct the project. And so what was originally a very top-down project became more shared. We had many more shareholders in this project moving forward. We also had 4 consultants join us full-time as collaborators, 2 from Siri Suri, 2 from Kulor. And They arrange the recording sessions. They record their own even after we left the field. They also communicate with the community about the project goals in terms of consent. And they transcribe and translate recordings. So they have huge roles in the project, and it's been really fun. The training, they weren't totally trained by the end of it, but it's been very cool to watch the training continue as we've worked with them and watch them gain more agency over the project, get ideas, and take charge of different aspects of the project. So just some general conclusions. We believe that this project would not have been possible without the training. In a condensed time period, this was a great way to get to know the community and have people willing to work with us in a very short amount of time. And we've even had our consultants working hard since we left the field. It also made the project much more collaborative, right? I mentioned that it was a top-down project from the start, but now we have consultants who are very invested. We have governmental bodies and cultural bodies that are also invested in shaping the project and becoming more confident in what they want the project to look like. So we think that this would be a good strategy for people who are working in places that don't have that same history of settler colonialism as the US, Australia, and the need to bridge the gaps between the Western Academy and language groups. So this is just one model, but we hope that it inspires ideas for others in the future. So we want to thank the Endangered Languages Documentation Program for their support, as well as our consultants Noor E. Hale, Aisa Litiloli, Zaidin Hale, and Ali Sampalesi. Thank you so much.